Today's guest is one of the toughest, most passionate competitors to ever step onto a footy field. James Graham's a professional rugby league player, England's most capped international, a grand final winner with St Helens, and a fearless warrior who left it all on the field every single game he played. But James is so much more than a rugby league icon. Since retiring, he's become a leading voice in media, a passionate advocate for athlete well-being, and the founder of Stacking the Odds. He's brutally honest, deeply driven, and never afraid to change the status quo. This conversation isn't going to be just about sport. It's about leadership, resilience, identity, and building something meaningful after the final whistle blows. James Graham, welcome to the Founder Podcast. So, looking back, what sparked your journey, and did you ever imagine it would take you as far as it did?
So what sparked my journey was a chance visit to a newsagent by my father back when I was 7 years old. So I grew up in the city of Liverpool in England, where football or soccer, as it's known over here, is the dominant sport. Rugby league, rugby union don't really have a foothold in there. So I was just like any kid from Liverpool, where you played soccer, break time, lunchtime, played soccer with my brothers. My dad had always been a rugby league fan, and he was going down to Wembley to watch the Challenge Cup final, I think in 1993, to watch Wigan play Widnes. He'd go to the Challenge Cup final each and every year, and on this particular year, he stopped at a newsagent with my grandfather before he got on the coach to go down to Wembley. And there was a little sign, a little note saying, St Helens Crusaders under sevens need players. If you're interested, call this number. So he jotted the number down, came home, and Sunday he was like, "Oh, James, what do you think about this?" And to be honest, I didn't really think anything. I didn't really know. At that time, I was close to joining like a proper soccer team, as opposed to playing with my mates at school and whatnot. And then he bought a rugby ball, and he took me to the park, and bizarrely enough, he put high kicks up bombs, and I was catching them, and all right, I'll do it, Dad, I'll go. So on the Wednesday, I go down, and they're actually playing a game. And look, I didn't really know the rules. I didn't really know what I was doing. But what I did know is I fell in love straight away with this game called rugby league. And ever since that day, it pretty much has been the axis upon which my world and quite a large portion of my family has spun. So that was the chance encounter that sparked this love of the game that's dictated my life for the past about 32 years.
Well, you're England's most capped player. How's that milestone? What's that mean to you personally? And has it helped shape your perspective on the game?
Look, I think it's just a number. To represent your country is a huge honour. Like going back to that little boy that just started playing, I just was having fun then, and then it soon, in sort of mid-teens, it gets a little bit more serious, and obviously you have aspirations to achieve things in the game with the team that I supported, which was St Helens, and obviously the country that I'm very proud to be from. So look, I was just there. Like when people say, "Oh, the most capped player" or whatever, it's just like, well, I just happened to be fit and in form to play for England. So yeah, look, it was a huge honour, and yeah, the numbers, it doesn't really matter whether it was 1, whether it was 50. I was just delighted to do it each and every time.
James, after such like a decorated sporting career, what's motivated you to sort of want to help people? And I know that our interactions have been all about that, and mate, you're one of the really good servants of the game. But tell us about Stacking the Odds. Tell us about your passions for helping people, both during your career and post career, and just share with us about Stacking the Odds and what you're up to.
Yeah, so I finished playing, and like a lot of athletes, kind of don't really know what to do next. I always assumed I'd become a coach, then had a little look behind the curtain, and for numerous reasons, one being the insecure nature and the um, yeah, just a lot of things that happen in coaching that I'd have to be, and I wasn't probably prepared to do that for myself and for my family. Being a professional athlete, you have to be incredibly selfish, and I think you have to um, be that way inclined to make it as a professional coach. You know, they say family first, but ultimately, you know, the football department is the family, and you know, you have to make so many sacrifices, which I'm willing to do, but just not to that extreme when it comes to coaching. But so I sort of fell into a few different things, and I think there's a lot of lessons to be learnt from the professional athlete world, and they can translate to business. They can translate to the development of young individuals or young groups. I think there's a lot of lessons through sport, both good and bad. Um, you know, nobody would preach to anybody to be perfect. I think mistakes are made, and it's only human to have mistakes in your life. But you know, the sporting mindset is one of what to do next, how to bounce back from that setback, how to build resilience, which is a fabulous lesson that I learned through the power of sport. You know, I'm motivated to help people. I still feel I can do a lot more in this space. I do have some sort of private ambitions to do a fair bit more in this space once I figured out some personal issues. That's something that's going to drive me in, I believe, the next decade in life. So yeah.
To share, like you mentioned that, you know, some of the challenges that players had. Can you talk us through a moment that was a real particular challenge for you in your career that really tested you?
Um, yeah, probably accepting it was over was the biggest one. Yeah. Um, I think, yeah, I played from 2003 to 2020 as a professional athlete in the Super League, the NRL, the international arena, and that realization that it it doesn't it doesn't keep going. It is finite, and just coming to terms with that and the acceptance that it was great while it lasted, but it can't go on forever. And sometimes those feelings still can come to the surface at different points in time. But that is it is, you know, I've been quite fortunate in terms of um, I've only I've not really had to deal with too much misfortune in life in terms of like dealing with tragedy and whatnot. Um, but they say athletes they die twice, and yeah, just figuring out and coming to terms with the fact that your sporting career is done, and how the attitude and um, style of reflection upon that sporting career is and was when it was over.
So obviously, like I'm wondering, I'm sitting here going, you know, I've, you know, you and I have sort of formed a bit of a bond around, you know, our desire to help people. And James, you're doing some remarkable things with everything you're doing. But obviously, you've just spoken about that transition from sports person. Talk to us about, you know, what's life as, you know, what's life in the business world like for, you know, someone who was a sportsman for so many years, and you know, what's it like in the media? What's it like with all your work that you're doing on TV? How did you find that transition?
Yeah, the transition in the first 6 months was horrible. I certainly wouldn't want any sympathy for this. I'm just telling the story, but I was really lost. I didn't know what to do. Complete change in life. The family and I had moved back to England to finish the playing career, came back here to Australia, and then COVID really hit. And I guess people had experienced COVID before with the lockdowns and some of the measures that were put in place. But as an athlete, we didn't really experience it properly. But then I was experiencing it properly for the first time in the sort of March of 2021, and coupled with this new life and this new chapter, I was a mess. And fortunately, very supportive family, some very good friends from the game in the sort of medical department that really helped me out. It really helped me out and helped me with some mental health issues that I'd been suffering with. Whether or not I'd had these whilst I was playing, they really manifested during that initial transition phase. So I'm very grateful for those people for being in my life at that particular time.
Pretty hard, and mental health is a big thing amongst everybody at the moment, and in particular I can imagine just on the professional athletes. So just can you just walk us through a little bit more of that struggle, that mental health side of things, and did you turn to anything to help you?
Look, I guess when you're a professional athlete, you probably do have like serious mental health issues, but the team environment in particular is a bit like group therapy in a weird kind of way. And I look back and go, that probably was my therapy there. And the game itself was probably the medication. And I was quite obsessive, so I could almost justify those obsessions because it was sport and it did mean everything, and it probably should have meant everything. But then when I kind of lost that thing to put all your efforts into, I just didn't know. And like I say, we were in lockdown, and you're making a family meal, and you're treating it like a game of football. Like it's got to be perfect, and you're like, what is going on here? And I was not particularly fun to be around. And the way I got help was speaking to professionals and not being too proud to think you're going to solve this yourself. Like anytime I'd had issues in the past, you have a huge support system, but a lot of it comes down. Well, the overwhelming majority of it is going to come down to you. How much do you use that support? How much do you use your coaches? How much do you use the resources that the club provides for you? But it's going to come down to you, with a little bit of encouragement along the way. So, yeah, for the mental health stuff, like it was encouragement from people who opinions that I value, but then it came down to me to go and access those resources because they're there for everybody. We the society and the culture now in Australia, England, two countries that I know well, is it's very much accepted, and there is help out there. And I'm very grateful for Dr. Stefan Eriksson, who's one of the doctors at the St. George Illawarra Dragons that was absolutely fantastic for me. Helped explain a number of things, and it's still something that I deal with to this day. I'm not ashamed to say that, like with medication and therapy. So, I think as well as that, a commitment to an exercise regime is also particularly helpful, I feel. So yeah, those three things in particular is something that has helped me, and I think will continue to help me.
I'm really glad you brought that up because I know I've gone through my own struggles as well, and I really found that exercise side of things was a huge benefit. And I also love what you said about the locker room. I still played team sport, and I think there's a lot to be said for the banter in the locker room and how you can solve a few world problems and shed a few problems and get some support from the boys.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think as well, like being united under a common cause is hugely beneficial. Like I say, that's probably what was helping for all those years, that we were all united for this common cause. We were all trying to row in the same direction, and like it was a heap of fun as well. Like let's not beat around the bush. It was a lot of fun, and it's a bizarre life that you live as an athlete. It really is. It's the best, and sometimes you probably don't realise that until it's done.
So talk to us about, obviously we've talked a lot about courage and, displaying that. And, when you transitioned into those public speaking roles, obviously, that would have taken a lot of courage to do that. Certainly in my opinion, it would have. And tell us about what the most rewarding part of that transition was. Like for everyone listening out there, we think, how did he do it? How did he do all those? How does he do all that public speaking stuff, on TV? How does he do it?
Look, for me, I'm very passionate about the game, and I think if you know what you're talking about, it should just come natural. I think that's a really important thing. Obviously, you make notes, you have details, but ultimately, if you, in terms of like public speaking, whatever the topic is, I'm comfortable if I feel I know what I'm talking about and have the confidence to talk about. So if an issue comes up in the game, I'll be reading about it, finding out the information. I think how to formulate a strong point is super important. I've read it. Like critical thinking skills I think, are vastly important as well. And I think communication skills are something that I guess I think has come probably naturally, but being enhanced through sport, rugby league, and some leadership roles that I had along the way.
What do you see to be the biggest misconception about professional rugby league players?
I don't know. I don't know if there's. I don't really know what people think. Yeah, that's a tough question because I don't know what people think about rugby league players. That maybe the old school, they're just dumb, but I've met some really intelligent and interesting.
Yep, me too.
So obviously you're super passionate about, James, we've had many conversations about mental health, resilience, just your general interest in helping people. How do you think your experiences as a player specifically, when you're a player from 2003 to 2020, like you said, how do you think they've shaped and influenced who you are today and those beliefs?
Oh, it's the overwhelming majority of my makeup is through the game of rugby league. There's no other way to put it. It shaped how I think, how I feel, what I value. Doesn't necessarily mean that those values and those beliefs are correct, but it it certainly shaped the way I think. Yeah, maybe it's an extreme view, and it's probably not for everybody, but that's sort of who I am. The people who I was around, the environment that I was in, high stakes professional sports. Just it's a huge part of who I am.
Oh, perfect, mate. Thank you for sharing that.
Just wanted to circle back, like just into that physical fitness side of things. Like now you're turning 40 this year, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So getting to that stage in your life, how do you find and what's your fitness regime look like now? How do you stay in shape and look good, feel good?
So I prioritize exercise. If there's a window in the day, I'll make sure I've got some gym gear to either just go for a run or go throw some weights around. I know how important it is. I can't really. I know the importance of letting that slip. Sorry, not letting that slip. So look, I have a relatively, and I'm very fortunate in this position to be where I am in a pretty flexible schedule or a number of commitments, but I'll schedule time most days to fit in some form of physical activity, which I think. Well, look, I personally I enjoy, whether it's just running by myself. I think that's really valuable thinking time. A lot of the time, I don't use headphones, so it helps me churn through some thoughts about life or the game or issues in the game. But yeah, it's a big part of my life, but it's also a part of, I guess, the culture of where I live.
Look, in terms of, I suppose, this podcast today, as a professional sports person who's been across, UK and Australia, what's been the biggest, cultural differences you've noticed? And I suppose from, just for all of our listeners out there, like, what are some things that you've picked up about those two cultures?
Yeah, it's funny, we're so similar, but we're so different. I know Australians don't like rain. Local fields get closed with a bit of a sprinkle. Crowd attendance is are reduced if there's rain, which I always find quite humorous. Yeah, like I say, they're both we're similar, but there's some just some nuanced differences between the two countries, which sort of make even things like uh, like alcohol. In England, you can buy alcohol in the supermarkets, but in Australia, it's the shop outside. And so, kind of, what difference does that actually make? Yeah, but yeah, there's just little things that just make me laugh from time to time. And also, you call your mushy peas guacamole, which I always found strange.
You were known for your intense playing style. Has that intensity on the field translated into your life now off the field?
It's dialed down. It's not the same. Like I say, just when I played it as in the game, the result meant so much. I'd ride the aftershock of a victory or defeat was going to dictate how the next couple of days looked. I, I I value things I do now, but it certainly doesn't have that same level of care factor, and it certainly won't stay with me for the same amount of time as what a victory or defeat would have in the past.
Funny you mentioned that. I had the pleasure of attending an English Premier League game when I was in the UK last, and over there, that result that happens on a Saturday or a Sunday will dictate how that whole community behaves for the next couple of days.
It does. It does. Sport is very important to a lot of people. I have noticed, like, sport and culture has changed a little bit. It's maybe not as live or die as it used to be, with things like tipping competitions and fantasy sports. They sort of take that, ride the result of the team that you support with things like Supercoach. Like, people probably care more about their Supercoach team than they do the team that the club colours that they support, which is quite funny.
I suppose, like, in terms of, like, you talked about that transition from professional athlete to, professional in life. How do you stay motivated now? What's your way to stay motivated off the field as opposed to on the field?
Why do I stay motivated? How do I stay motivated? I don't know. Yeah. Motivation's a funny thing. I guess I've always been quite a driven person to try and be successful in whatever domain of life I'm in. I guess for something like my podcast, the Buy Round, I'm motivated to provide quality insight to the game, and have some fun along the way as well. Like I'm motivated by doing fun things, and then with the ability to try and help people through some difficult moments. And it's important to know that those difficult moments do pass. Listen to some philosophy and think about, like, when you're on your deathbed, they say you'll look back and you'll go, wow, I cared about the wrong things. That was sport for me, maybe, and there's some other things in life, and why do I care so much about that? That's something I'm still working on. But I guess I'm motivated to provide good insight, have some fun, and I do enjoy seeing new things, having cool experiences, which some through sport and some through travel.
Right, and I'm conscious of time. And just before we rip into the quickfire questions, resilience. What lessons from rugby do you think that everybody, not just athletes, can apply to their own lives?
That things pass, and they not like difficult times pass, positive times pass. It's probably not as good as what you think it is, and it's definitely not as bad as what you think it is. And yeah, that's probably the thing that I've learned is, the struggles, they're real. You can make them worse, you can make them better, but they do pass. Like, even just anybody out there, quick exercise to do with themselves is think about 2 years ago what they were doing and how different life looks, and then think about 2 years into the future. Now, obviously, there'd be some people that have dealt some pretty devastating health news that would go, well, it doesn't really apply to me, but the overwhelming majority of people can look forward to a positive future and know that things do change.
Well said. So, quick fire questions, mate. You ready?
Yes, I am.
Your favourite memory on the field?
Favourite memory on the field would be my last outing, winning the Premiership over in England with the last roll of the dice, during COVID lockdown in front of an empty stadium, for the team that I supported as a little boy, was, just beyond anything I could explain.
Most challenging opponent?
Most challenging opponent would be Roger Tuivasa-Sheck.
Have a pre-game ritual? What do you miss most about playing?
The danger.
Australia or England, who had the better fans?
Ooh. I'll go England.
Who's the worst coach that you ever had?
I'd rather not say.
The best advice that you ever received from a coach?
Daniel Anderson gave me some tools, and he said, take responsibility, you're going to own this.
What's your favourite part about doing media work?
My favourite part about doing media work is that you still get to go to games. Like, it's cool to go to games and watch games live. Like, I was at the Bulldogs v Roosters game on Friday just gone. I watched Cronulla Sharks v the Melbourne Storm on the TV, which was great. And then I was at the Broncos v Dragons game, and just being at the games, like, is really cool. Like, and that, like, it's a job in a way, but it's kind of like I'm here at this game, which is yeah, it's really cool to be at the game.
What's your most memorable public speaking moment?
Most memorable public speaking moment? Don't think I have one.
Who's your rugby league hero?
Rugby league hero would have been a man called Paul Sculthorpe.
Favourite teammate of all time?
James Roby.
Describe your leadership style in one word.
Leadership style in one word. Intense.
What do you love most about being on centre stage presenting? What's the favourite stadium that you ever played on?
The old St Helens ground, Nosey Road.
And if you weren't in rugby or media, what would you have chosen? What's one skill rugby gave you that you use every day? All right, last question. What's the best piece of advice that you could give our listeners today?
Keep pushing through.
Well said. What a great way to finish. Really appreciate your time. It's been awesome meeting you. All the best.
Thank you so much for having us on, lads. Really appreciate what you guys are doing, Ben, especially with the work that you do in the schools. You're really making a difference, mate, and you should be very proud of the impact that you're having. I think there's a lot of young people that are lost, and they just need a little bit of guidance, and they deserve it. And thanks to people like you and your team, they're getting it.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate the kind words. Thanks for coming on today, eh?
My pleasure. Look forward to catching up with you guys very soon.